Hello, this is Mono, the creator of Spaceship and Orbital. I'm going to be talking about some map making concepts that are going to help you make a better map. Mostly going to be focusing on optimization, some tips and tricks and tools that I've learned and acquired along the way, and basically try to talk about things that Snooperfax has not already talked about in his excellent map making video that talks about the basics. It'll take you all the way through making a map from start to the end. But this is going to help you refine your map, get it lower in size, figure out what things you need, what you can cut, and just you'll have a much more optimized map at the very end of this. It's smaller in size without very much, if at all, any quality loss if you do it right. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to talk about a few settings in Bakery first. If you see right here, my light map is 4 light maps at 2K textures each, 16 megabytes. Okay, so this is my Bakery settings. He talked about it Bakery a little bit, but I'm just going to go over a few of the settings here. The first one is going to decrease the size that we were talking about pretty dramatically here. So right now, again, it's 16 megabytes. I'm going to go ahead and turn on Atlas Packer to X Atlas. So on the default Atlas Packer, I should have had this open, but I forgot. Let's close this, get this going. Looking at this map, we can see there's a lot of space here. So the default Atlas Packer leaves a lot of space that it just doesn't fill up. I don't know why. It sucks. It's just terrible. So what we're doing here in Atlas Packer, the X Atlas, it packs it in a much more consistent way. So you put on X Atlas and you put on this hole filling mode, which starts default off. Okay? So the only downside to using this is it can take longer, a lot longer in some cases. So I would only kind of do it when you want an idea of how big it's going to be for your final, or again for the final light bake before you send it out. I'll be doing this at the end so we can see the difference. But as of right now, there's a lot of improvement we can make on these textures. So just keep that in mind. Other than that, I do adjust UV padding and put decrease only. So what this is going to do is it's going to better, if you ever notice and you have like walls placed next to each other and light bleeds through a hole that's either so minusculely tiny that you can't see it with your own eyes, or there's no gap as far as you can tell, but there's still like a light bleed. This sometimes can solve the problem. It's really easy. It barely adds any time to your bake, and it ends up with a better product most of the time. So try that out. So that's basically all I wanted to go there. Again, it is X Atlas and fill holes or hole filling, which is going to be the biggest improvement to your size other than the basic stuff like texels. But anyway, moving on here. Hey guys, this is Mono again. I realize I forgot to go over something I planned to go over, so I'm just going to quickly do that here. This is another map of mine that I'm working on. The other one, you wouldn't be able to see the difference because all the light maps are 2K each, which is what our target is. So just a quick explanation. When it's light mapping, like I said, it's putting this all into a light map here. It's putting each object in there. It's assigning a UV coordinate. So you want to have 4K size. You don't want smaller because it's going to end up being bigger more or less, and usually wasting more space. So having one of it is more efficient, or the least amount possible is what I'm going for here. So you want to have 4K, but they're big. They're 16 megabytes each when it's a 4K texture. What we're going to do is we're going to let it bake with 4K, so it puts it into the larger map size. Then we're going to find wherever you have it set to go. So I have mine with use scene named output path, and that way it gets put into a folder all by itself with the name of the map. It just keeps it nice and organized. So I have mine under, I have like a Unity projects folder, and then it has the name of the map with the light map in it. So for this map, this is Soviet bunker at this time. I'm going to select all the light maps. With my settings, I only have a max size for this light map of 4K and a min of 2K. So it doesn't matter that I'm selecting 2K ones necessarily if there is any. I'm going to change the size to 2K. Apply. It's now going to downgrade these light maps. And there's not that big of a change, but our light map went from, I believe it was 48 to 12 megabytes, so that's going to save a ton of space. I'm an idiot for forgetting to talk about this. But yeah, that's why I'm making this video now. I'm going to go ahead and bring these back to 4K so I can show you what the size was before, because I forgot. But yeah, you definitely want to do this because your light map can easily be over 100 megabytes just by itself. When you make this same mistake that I did. I mean, look, it's not that big of a deal with a change, but it's 48 megabytes now. So yeah, that's something you should definitely do. Again, after you light bake every time, you're gonna have to reduce the size of these manually in order to get the right look and the right size that we're going for. So again, this is another important part. I just forgot to talk about it because the light maps in the tutorial map are only 2K each, and it just slipped my mind. Sorry about that. I noticed here that this object looks odd. The shadows on it don't look right. So we're going to go ahead and solve that now. The most likely problem is it's not generating light map UVs. Okay, so we're going to double click on it so we can get past the parent object sometimes things have. And then we're going to click in the mesh. We're going to click box one top or just anything in there, which will bring us to the models. So these are the models. And in the bottom right corner here, you can see how many verts it's using, which is helpful when you're trying to optimize how many verts is in your scene. But we have a better way of doing that, which I'll talk about soon. So what we really want to go to is the parent object for that. This is the parent object. We can see here that this object is not generating light map UVs. So we set that, click apply, and boom, it looks normal again. If you have any kind of shadow issues with an object, that's the first thing you should check, hands down, because most of the time, the asset maker didn't put on generate light map UVs. So there we go. It looks normal and good again. That's great. Other than that, we're going to talk about just what we can do to optimize the scene to make it work the same but be a lesser size and what affects that. So just starting out here, looking at the size, I just built this. It's 97 megabytes for this scene, which is everything we have in this. This isn't very good at all. We could do a lot better than this. And this is just a simple scene. What to keep in mind here is that your map is going to be bigger. It's going to be more complex. There's probably going to be more different objects than this. And you're going to get a much bigger gains. I'm talking like from 600 to 800 down to 300 if you do it right. So we're going to go through that process a little bit here and see what we can get as far as gains for this simple scene with a couple of different objects. They're just all clustered in one small spot. So it looks like there's a lot, but in your map, there's probably going to be more objects. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of that. Normally, we'd have to go through each object one at a time, find its texture, which isn't directly linked. It links to its material, which then from there you can get to the texture, and then you can be like, oh, this one's 0.7, good to know. That's not really worth reducing the size of, already. So that's a pain in the butt and will take a really long time. Now we can do this better. We're going to use a tool called Resource Checker. It's in the Windows tab once you download it, which I will link in the description or pinned comment, depending on this video. So this is what this looks like. There's a lot of information here. I'm going to go over it all. First off, we can see the textures. It's all listed. It's this, for example, this one's 21 megabytes. It has 2 objects that are using this texture. And that is not good. So anytime it's 21, that's going to be a 4K texture. You can see right here as well. And in general, you don't need 4K textures for Onward, guys. A very few, you'll see a huge decrease in quality, but those are few and far between, and really no one's going to notice except you. So we want to reduce these and see what we can gain by reducing the texture size of our objects. So I'm going to click on this. We can now, it'll select it for us without having us go through the file structure and find it. We can see the size of it here again. This is just kind of paraphrasing, or this is paraphrasing this information here. But what object is using this? Let's figure out. You can notice here that highlighted and selected the objects that it was using these textures. So let's go ahead and just take a closer look at these. What we want to do here is now, with knowing these objects that are being used, we want to reduce this and see what changes are made. I usually find it easier to notice if we turn the lighting down or off, so that way we can notice the most minute of changes. What I usually do is I do the lowest quality first, so I can see what changes really dramatically. It'll make your object look like garbage most of the time, especially with an albedo texture. But we're just trying to figure out because we can play with this. So I did notice some changes right here and right here, I think. Let's bring it back to 4K. Okay, there's some minor changes in this kind of like trim. Let's bring it down to, let's say 1K. Okay, that's not a very big change. Normals are going to be like, normally what makes your object pop, it's going to be like adding complexity to your object without actually modeling that in, which adds a lot of verts. So like having this come out, extrude out, is going to add more verts than just having it be a block. But normals allow those people that make those assets to fake it, more or less, but it still looks good. But in this case, we are getting basically no change. So I took this one that was 21 megabytes down to 341 kilobytes. You don't really have to go further than this. This is like pennies basically at this point, and there's not really a quality change, so I'm happy with that. So I'm going to leave that. It's not going to update automatically until we click calculate again, and boom, it's gone. We've just reduced it by 20 megabytes, and that's good. So let's go on to the next object here. First off, the first thing, honestly, I forgot to talk about this earlier. The first thing you should do when you're going to optimize is tell yourself, like, do I need this object? Do I need this object? Do I need this one? Because I only have one of them in my scene. Can I replace it with something that I already have, or more importantly, with a material that I already have, because the model doesn't matter, that will allow me to reduce the amount of overall textures that we have used here, or materials here. Because if I can do that, I'm going to completely remove one or more of these textures that are being used in my map. So for example, I could just delete this, calculate, and boom, I just made a huge increase in, or decrease in texture size, and I didn't lose very much for it. I could just replace it with this. Boom. Would anyone notice that? I don't think so. Did my texture size increase? No. Because it doesn't matter how many things you have. It just doesn't change it because it's only drawing it once, because it's static. And I mean, you already loaded the texture. So trying to consolidate textures or just putting on the same textures if it'll fit your object will decrease the size of your map. Okay, that's the first step you should do before reducing, because you might just replace objects altogether. And I'll talk about a way to, or a tool anyways, that'll allow you to replace objects more easily when you have like a lot of little objects. In fact, actually, I'll just go over that now. So in that vein, I want to reduce the amount of objects, unique objects in my map. Well, here's this box. I have this kind of box. I have that one over there. There's this one here. Do I need that many boxes? I don't think so. I'm going to go ahead and save here. So I'm going to use this tool. This one's in the tool tab. They all do different stuff because they're dumb. I'm going to remove this for now. So this tool, I will have one caveat. I've had it crash my Unity once, so before using it, always save your scene just in case it does crash it on you. But anyways, let's go ahead and replace these boxes with these ones because I don't need that many boxes. Okay, so I need to find this crate 1. So I'm going to go ahead and just type crate 1. And I'm going to drag this up into the prefab. This is going to tell the tool, this is the object that I want you to use to replace the objects I'm about to select. So I'm going to select every one of these boxes here. Okay, so it takes a while, but I have 6 objects selected. I'm going to click replace, and it replaces all of them. This is really useful to replace a lot of objects at once, or if you're using texture atlasing, which is going to make a brand new object most of the time, or at least the tool I use. And then you'll have to replace them all by hand, which is a pain in the butt. I've done that, I've been there. But then I found this after I did that, so wonderful. But anyways, I've replaced all of these. The only thing to keep in mind is that sometimes the scale of your different objects are different. And you'll have to do a little bit of tweaking sometimes. But a lot of times like this, I don't have to do anything. It's worked perfect. So that's good. Other than that, again, you can use it with the texture atlasing, which I'm only going to go over a little bit here. It's more of an advanced thing than even this. And you don't really need to do it unless you're working on a quest map or you have a very complex scene. So don't really worry about that, but I will link it in the description. So anyways, going back to Resource Checker, another useful thing here that this can do, well, I'll go over that in a minute. Anyways, back to what we're doing. So here's this next one. Let's keep going and reducing the size. So we have this object here. First off, there's no shadows. That's odd, isn't it? This is the number one reason why you're not going to have shadows, is that it's not static. So once you make it static and you rebake, you'll have shadows again most tick. So just keep that in mind. You want to look for the ones that don't have it, and I'll show you a way you can kind of find those in a minute. But anyways, we have this object here. I already know that this one's part of it. Pretty much anything that says wall atlas is part of it. And this is adding a ton of space to our map. It's an atlas for a pack I have, and it has a lot of objects on it and a lot of different quality settings, basically, from the sub textures that add a lot of space. So let's reduce that. So this is 4K in size. Let's reduce this down to 512, see what happens. Nothing, it did not change in size. Size-wise, there's no change in here, so what happened? Well, it took me a while to figure this out, but some things are just not going to reduce by the default size changing, texture changing thing. So what we have to do is click this little button right here. It says PC, Mac, and Linux standalone. We're going to click that, and you have to click this setting right here. If you're making a quest map, obviously you're going to have to find, I think you need a package which will allow you to do it for quests because it's an Android, but I haven't done that and I'm not sure how that works yet because I haven't done it, so you'll have to figure that one out. But anyways, assuming you're just making a PC map, for the basic version of Onward that we all play right now, you would tick this object and that'll allow you to change this similar setting. So I'm going to go ahead and make it 1K. Not much change, but we did reduce the size of this texture by a lot. So again, I'm going to put it to lowest to see what changes. Okay, it seems to be this middle object here. I'm going to go ahead and put it back to 2K. Okay, there's a little change on the side, it looks like. Oops. And I'm just going to make it 4K because I think I might use this on another map. So again, something to keep in mind when you're doing this is you're doing it for every project. This isn't just for this one scene. This is for your entire project. So if you do all your Onward map in one project, you're going to see these changes throughout all of your maps. So keep that in mind when you're doing this. So if you use an object in multiple maps, the same object, you're going to have to be aware that it's going to change it on all of them. And some are going to be hard to know, like for example this one, which has a bunch of atlas textures and multiple of them, which used in multiple objects. So do keep that in mind. Okay, so that's how I'd be reducing that. I could get those down a lot. I'm just going to go ahead and delete this, which again is the best way to reduce size is delete stuff. And that reduced the size by a ridiculous amount. But anyways, moving on. We still have this platform. Where are you? Right here, this one. Any albedo or ones that have diffuse in the name generally are going to be kind of like main textures per se, and you're going to see the biggest change. So these are the ones you're going to want to give the most quality. Because like, look at that. That's garbage. That looks terrible. You can probably get away with this, to be honest, but you're not going to get away with worse. So these are the few ones that sometimes 4K is all right because you just lose too much reducing that any less. Okay. Let's take a look here. We have this guy right here. Let's reduce that down. Honestly, I'd be pretty okay with this. It looks a little blurry, but only because you know what it looked like before. But let's put it to 1K. Okay, that's starting to look a little bit better. It has a little bit of detail. Remember, guys, this is a roof. It's not something people are looking at that often. I'd probably leave it right at this. See what 2K looks like. It's a bit better. It's kind of a judgment call here, how important it is they would look. But I'd probably honestly go with 1K if it's just going to be like a pie where players aren't going to be looking very often. You're not going to notice this when it's just in the corner of your eye and you're running around. So I'd leave it at that. We got more space here. Moving on. And something to keep in mind here as well is that the changes to your size only show once you click calculate. So again, there's 10 more saved, roughly. We have this guy right here, which is these kind of pillar wall things. Let's reduce that down to 32. If you want a low retro look, I guess that would be good. 1K. Looks good. Okay, moving on. I could probably try 512, but since we don't have time for that, I'm gonna go here. This is also the same object somewhere, somehow. Sometimes it's hard to know what it is. It's probably the roof here, though, is my guess. Yes. You know how many people are gonna see this roof? No one. 512 will do. That's a bunch of space saved. Gonna go to the next object, these stairs. I think I've already done this in a different map. It already looks pretty garbage-like. Nope, I haven't. Did that change? Yeah, it did. And you know how much it changed? Like none. Like almost nothing. I can even leave it on that, honestly. Boom. That's more space saved. Okay, we got another normal. This wall. Okay, if it's this one, no, it was this one. Let's reduce that down. You notice a change? Live out in 4K. Nope. It won't even go to 4K. It's too crappy of a texture. 512 is perfect. I wouldn't bother going lower than 512 again. Moving on, we have this guy right here. This is tank. Very sexy looking tank. Sad tank, all in all. Let's reduce that down to 32. Get some changes, I suppose. 512 looks good. I'll leave that there. And then you're just going to keep going through these, doing them one at a time, checking the object, see how it changes it, and see what happens. Oh, I wouldn't, ambient occlusion maps or whatever tend to make huge changes, kind of like, it's kind of like a souped up normal map, more or less. I wouldn't reduce those, they're already small anyway. So now it's down to 90. We started at like 200 or 300 or something. That's a nice change. I would keep doing this all the way down until you get to the 2.67. At that point, it's just not worth your time. But if you're making a map, I would go down to 5.33 and reduce those. Okay. Another thing we can do with this tool is look at our meshes. So I'm going to go to the mesh tab. This is going to give us information on our verts of our objects in our scene, as well as what's static or not. So again, we could see that that object's gone now. This one isn't a thing. We have to click this. These spawn points, those don't really matter because they're not going to be visible. But this one right here, this one's different because it's a skinned mesh, so don't worry about that. Honestly, I don't really know this yet, but I don't worry about it. This vase is not a static, so we'll just change that. So again, it doesn't have like a light map. It's not a static, so it's going to be drawn no matter what. It's not going to be light mapped. You just want everything that's not moving, like basically an animation, to be static. Good file structure that I kind of have one. Not really. Will help you do that. I usually have decorations. But anyways, just watch Snoopy's video for that. It goes over that already. But anyways, let's just see what our scene is right now. Okay, 77K verts, 58 trees, 43 batches as draw calls. This is not bad, but we can do better. You have, if you're just making for PC, you don't have to worry about this too much as long as your verts don't go over, I believe, 2 million. And your batches or draw calls at 800, but you want to do less if you can. So this is where what models you have is important, because they add this vert, any type kind of changes or complexity in the model are going to increase the vert count. These boxes are going to be like nothing, but these more complex objects are going to be a lot more. But anyways, using this tool, let's recalculate because we went into play mode. We can see that on the surface, these walls right here are the most verts at 6K each. What we can do is taking a look at this object. First off, if you notice this flicker, that's Z fighting. That means that they're inside of each other and on the same height. So I think Snoopy already went over that, so I'm not going to really do that. Basically, getting these lined up instead of being inside of each other is going to fix that problem, or adjusting the height a little bit. But each of these is 6K verts. What could we do to alleviate that? Well, the easiest thing you could do is adjust the scale. So does that look that bad if you replace these other ones with it? Let's just do that right now. Let's copy paste and pretend like I did that really well, and we got that all lined up. That could work. The only problem here is that some objects with overhangs like this are going to be a pain in the butt, because the overhang gets wider and then you can't stack them up as well. So do keep that in mind. Let's just pretend that wasn't a problem. Well, there we go. You solved the problem, right? There is a downside to this, as now your object is bigger in the light map. So already I know these are a problem. If we look at this, the scale on lightmap, objects and size in lightmap has reached the max atlas size. So basically going back here to our thing, each of these objects has a space in this atlas. This object is so big that it won't fit in these atlases. So we have to reduce that. Okay? It would work with 0.5. It won't work with 0.6. So 0.5 is what these will be. Okay? Sometimes with these larger objects that they don't really matter that much that they have, sexy shadows on them, you could reduce it even more. I've reduced some large objects to 0.01 even because I don't care how good the shadows look on them because the player is almost never going to see them. So you can do that with all your objects that you want. You can scale them up if you want. I don't know how much that really increases it, but you do want to play with that because you can sometimes reduce the size if you're like on the break point of, you have one big empty one, especially after you use X Atlas. You might be able to get it down to reducing it down one more. So you only have one less and you reduce the size because it doesn't matter how much is used in this. As long as you have one that's at 2K, it's going to be 4. If you have one at 4K, it's going to be 16, I think, off the top of my head. And these are all 2K textures. So anyway, so that's how you deal with that. There is, like I said, a trade-off, but most of the time it's a good trade-off. So just doing that, we've reduced our verts down in trees. They're interlinked basically. So that's good. Going back, calculate. What else do we have? Well, this cube, because whoever made this asset did not name their models very good. That's a really common trope here. It's part of this tank, it looks like. It's part of the tank. Keyword here. Okay, that's 6K verts by itself. What's this? Oh, it's part of the tank as well. That's 5K more verts. What else do we have? To cut this short, we could just look at all these objects. These are all part of it, and there's often several of them. I mean, there's several of these drums, for the tank tread stuff. And this tank is adding a ridiculous amount. Sometimes that's okay if it's it really adds to your map. You're making a PC map, especially, that could stay. As long as you account for it and you budget for it, it's going to be all right. So you can leave that. But let's assume that we're making a quest map or we're on the verge of getting to 2 million verts. Well, let's delete it. What did we save? A lot. I think we were like 70K or so verts or something like that. So just keep that in mind that sometimes, again, deleting can be the best choice. Let's see. Okay, 65. So not too terrible. Keep that in mind, though. Deleting can often make a huge change, and just going through and figuring out what just is taking too much space. You generally want to aim for low poly, low vert stuff, as that's you're not going to notice huge quality stuff in VR, and it's just kind of what we have to deal with people's hardware. You want to aim for the lower end so everyone can play your map, and not just the people with beefy, huge gaming PCs. Okay, so other than that, you could just go through here, reduce those. I think, or he already went over, Snoopy went over, I should say, occlusion, which is going to help by not drawing this tank if it's not being drawn or not being seen at all. Although the default one is garbage, so sometimes it will anyway, but that can help you with that as well. Other than that, we have the atlaser. I'm just going to quickly show you one I've already made. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to quickly just open up this one, which I know he uses one. This is a map I made for Quest. I was kind of playing with terrain. I used another tool that I'm not really going to go into, that allows you to turn a terrain into a mesh. Using it right is kind of complex. I also cut this map up in Blender to remove even more verts for pointless terrain. It's kind of mixed results. We'll see how it goes. But anyways, the MA toolkit. Let's see the editor. I'm gonna load it. Load this asset. Okay, so this is what the atlaser looks like. Okay, so I have all the textures that I use in this map all laid out in different sizes depending on what kind of quality I need. And it basically it'll pick up where it needs to put these textures, how to map it, UV map it. And it saves you a crap ton of draw calls because instead of drawing each one of these individually, it's just drawing one for every one of these objects. Okay, so that can be a tool that's really useful for you. Again, you don't really have to worry about this unless you are making for Quest or your map is ridiculously, it has too many objects or draw calls from different objects. So do keep that in mind if you need to do that. But again, most of the time you don't need to because it takes a crap ton of time. It's the most boring shit ever. Yeah, so keep that in mind. I'm going to go ahead and reload my tutorial project here. Okay, so now first off, we're going to bake this. I have X Atlas on, I have hole filling on. Every other setting is the same. It's not going to do this. Again, keep in mind that doing this, usually it'll look like it's frozen. It'll be like adjusting padding size or something else if you don't use that setting. And it'll just sit there for freaking ages on more complex, larger maps. It adds like 20 minutes or something onto Orbital when I bake that. But the size decrease you get from doing this it's worth it. It's not going to increase the quality, it's not going to do that, but it's going to decrease the size, which, again, I just want to hammer this in, guys. It's really important that you decrease the size of your map because then it loads faster, then there's less space that people have to put, for all these maps. Because just keep in mind, there's like 40 plus maps. There's even more now out there right now, but there's going to be even more and more maps coming out, and it's just going to get, it's already a couple gigs in size for the maps that we have now. So we want to do everything we can to reduce that. So this is really important, guys. You shouldn't be skipping this. Okay, so it's almost done here. All right, let's see. 4 megabytes from 16. Okay, it's even, you got to dial down to 1 2K texture. Now, one thing that I do want to keep in mind is that I did reduce the size of these, but trust me, you're going to see a big change in most cases if you use the X Atlas and hole filling. Okay, just to show you what that looks like. I think it's this one now, because it's this one. It leaves the old ones, so you might want to clear those out. It doesn't use them, so you don't really have to worry about it. It's just space on your disk, and it'll confuse you when you look at it, like I just did. But look at how more efficient this is. If these were the 0.5, it probably would have had to take 2. But the biggest one is really this giant ass terrain I don't need. Anyway, but this is good. This is optimized. That's just less space for your map. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and launch this, or build one that I can use to launch in the game. And we'll see what kind of size decrease we get doing that. Yeah, so if you guys want, I could make a tutorial on using the Atlaser Again, it's not something you have to really worry about unless you're making a quest map, and we don't know what the quest requirements truly are yet. We only have vague ideas. So I wouldn't make one unless, or honestly, I just wouldn't make one until 1.8. So then we have concrete, we'll have a guide, we'll have information from the devs on what you have to do to make it compatible for the quest, if they're even going to allow custom maps off the beginning at all. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so I just rebuilt that. I will show you now. Just from that really quick job I did, I do a lot more on a real map. I went from what I believe was 96 to 59. Okay, and the bigger your map is, more objects, more textures, the bigger change you're going to see, because so many of the asset makers, they leave their textures high, which in one case is good, so you can downsize them, but because you can't really upsize because you just lose quality that way. But they're going to leave it at the max textures in most cases, and you need to reduce those because you're not going to see a big change. This bean looks just about the same as it did before, but I reduced the size a lot, and you can see these huge gains in your map as well. For example, I already optimized orbital except for those textures I didn't know how to do, and it was like 200, 300 or something, especially spaceship. Let's go with spaceship. It was 320, I think, and I reduced it down to like 160. You can do this too on your maps. There's a lot of maps out there right now that could use this optimization, and it would be a godsend for everybody. It reduces load times. It'll make people want to play custom maps more often because they don't have to wait for these long loads. They don't have to do these long downloads. So just try to keep that in mind, guys. This is really important. It's just as important as making your map, because then people will actually play them. That's what we're going for, playing your map. So hopefully you learned something today. If you have any questions, please let me know. You feel free to private message me on Discord. I can answer some questions, but a lot of this is just going to be trial and error, trying it out, see what you can figure out. But I'm glad to help out here and there so we can get more excellent custom maps in Onward. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Play more customs.